Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Good morning. My name is Frank Moore. I'm with Autodesk. Like my colleague John Sullivan, who presented yesterday, I'm from the United States. I actually come out of the Boston area. I've been with Autodesk altogether too long, over 20 years. I'm actually, I will admit this, being at the Royal Institute of British Architects, I will admit that I am a mechanical engineer. I've been working a lot in BIM and interoperability the last several years. One of the projects that I was very involved with way back in 2005-06 was when the U.S. government, the General Service Administration, who makes all of the public buildings in the United States, started with their BIM program. So I got very involved as the technical project manager for Autodesk participation in that program, and I'll maybe through my presentation today I'll give some colorful comments about that program. I've been very active with Building Smart in lots of pilot projects, and then I've actually been directly involved with the UK BIM Task Group. I was actually over here in the fall of 2010 representing Autodesk on the COBE stream working group, and it's from where we are now to where we were then, it's a tremendous progress. Let me also introduce some other people from Autodesk that are here that might be able to, they're working the conference, and maybe during lunch and other times at breaks you can introduce them. John, are you around? Is John? Merrick? Guri? Guri around? Then we have Tim Jones with 3 Squared, who's going to be doing the second half of this presentation. He's 3 Squared is a strategic partner of Autodesk. So let me talk about today's topics. I'm just going to do a general statement on Autodesk support for standards in the industry. I'm going to talk about Autodesk Solutions and COBE. One of the things I want to talk about is, you'll see the slide where there's a whole bunch of guidance documents that make up the UK BIM Level 2 program. And for us at Autodesk, we're going to talk about where we think we're relevant. You know, we make software tools, so there's a lot of process involved, but we'll talk about where we're relevant. And the most relevant we think we are is in terms of how to make a COBE export from our products, and a little bit about how our software can be configured to support a PAS 1192 common data environment process. And then the more exciting thing we're going to do is I'm going to turn the presentation over to Tim Jones, and we're going to introduce a COBE solution for Autodesk Navisworks and Autodesk BIM 360. Anyone here use Navisworks in the audience? Okay. So you'll be excited to see that. I was going to take out my phone so I can sort of time myself, see what I'm doing. And let me talk about our commitment to standards. And without apology, I'm going to say that Autodesk was actually founded on open standards. I've been at Autodesk since, 1989? I started my CAD career at a place called Computer Vision. Everyone hear of Computer Vision? CAD's 4X. Used to run on a mini computer, the Data General Supernova. So in those days, you had single-purpose hardware and software. So in our history, we were the first major CAD vendor at the time to release an open standard, DXF, for getting data in and out of an AutoCAD system. You guys know about DXF, a fully documented open standard, right? The other thing that's interesting, today it's not that big a deal, but back in the late 80s, the notion of having running your CAD on a PC or a standard Unix workstation was radical, because in those days, Computer Vision, Apollo, we all ran on proprietary hardware. The other thing you heard Patrick from HOK talk about this in the opening yesterday, Autodesk, in fact, did found, it was the IAI, now called the Building Smart Alliance. And the other thing we have is we have a strong track record, especially over the last 10 years, of really supporting IFC. You hear a lot about it in Revit, but last year, we were in the first wave. One of the problems with IFC is the early certifications were kind of a joke, but I'm happy to report that Building Smart International has instituted a more rigorous certification process that takes us a lot longer, and I'm happy to report that all 3 Autodesk Revit titles were in the first wave of getting that new export certification. And then the other thing, I think John talked about it yesterday, is we did, several years ago, made the decision to make our IFC support in Revit open source, both for the import and the export. It helps us, that gives us the ability to enhance it. It also gives us the ability to leverage the ecosystem, and also if some smart guy like Nick Nesbitt with Building Smart is trying to prototype some way of doing things, he's free to actually try to prototype it in Revit before the standard becomes formalized. advance the slide here. So I'm just going to advance here. John talked about this yesterday. We are very involved in the UK task force. We've got several people. Merrick himself sits on a couple of committees. We have Adam Matthews that works on the task force. So we've got a lot of people working on that. And, you know, just like everybody else, we're still trying to get our arms around what it means to Autodesk. You see here. And as you know, you've seen this slide, a little bit truncated. This was a slide that was built for a PC. Talking about interoperability, right? This is a slide that was authored on a PC using Microsoft PowerPoint, and now hosted on a Mac using Microsoft PowerPoint. Little problem there, right? But what I want to say about this is there's a colorful story because we have a bi-weekly call because we at Autodesk want to make sure that we are giving appropriate guidance to our customers about what they should do and how we interact with this UK BIM Level 2. So the funny story is I'm one of the few Americans on the call, of course, and it was probably about 11 or 15 Brits, and we go around the room and say, okay, we really need to have some more specific guidance for our customers on UK BIM Level 2. We go around the room, say, hey, Merrick, what do you think BIM Level 2 means to our customers in Autodesk? You get a whole song and dance. The next person, so even within Autodesk, there was some confusion about just what it means in terms of that. But what we do is, we make software, but what we can do is we can do stuff that's actionable. So if you have a standard like COBie, it's actionable, we can do that. So that's why we're going to focus in on the BIS 1192-4 COBie and a little bit about the common data environment. The other thing I'm happy to report is you folks are familiar with the Digital Plan of Works projects or the BIM Toolkit that REBA's involved with. So I'm delighted that REBA Enterprises, in their prototype for the BIM Toolkit, has already integrated Revit into that. What you're seeing here is a screen where you actually log into their portal. And I don't know if Nick or someone, there's a video on their website that shows a more extensive demo, but essentially you can log into their portal with your credentials, and then in the background they send an IFC up to the portal. So I'm just happy, and we're in active discussions with REBA to make sure that we're getting them the right support they need in terms of integrating it with our APIs and the latest on what we're doing with IFC. So I'm just really happy to see that. Checking my time. I'm doing okay, right? Okay, how many people here are aware that we have a free toolkit for Revit to create COBie drops? Anyone heard of that before? Not a lot of them. And actually, matter of fact, from the previous presentation, I could tell that either the people hadn't heard of that, because we've got a lot of stuff we've done in the box and with this configuration to give people guidance. How many people know that we have a way to export a COBie IFC file from Revit? Anyone know about that? Does anyone want to do that? Right? Okay, so I'm glad we're here because we want to promote what we've done and get the word out. So there's two methods. We have a plug-in, and it exports the COBie spreadsheet. And what we tried to do with this, and we've been working on it for a while. We've been working on COBie since 2006 because it was very popular in the United States way back then. Is we tried to make it as true to how you would work in Revit as possible. So we came up with a bunch of schedules. I'll talk more about it in the rest of my presentation. We tried to make it very natural. And at the same time, we also have an IFC where we basically say, when you have your model all coded up, you can either export it to the spreadsheet or export it to IFC. And at this point, I'm going to ask the gentleman in the back room to sort of flash up the PDF. I want to show you folks a guidance document we put together on the IFC. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's 5 basic steps, and there's a multi-page document. So when people are talking about classifications and mappings, we get into some extraordinary detail on how to name things. If it's called Door A in Revit, but you want to call it something else when it goes out to IFC, there's ways to do all that. But basically, you have to configure Revit to use the open source IFC exporter. There's this thing called FM Handler Extended Model View Definition, which is otherwise known as COBie IFC. You use that. But you can also, I'm trying to see if I can see this. I think people can see the text. This really gets into the fact that we make the software. We don't always control what people do with it. So we have suggested a set of non-graphic parameters within Revit that house the COBie data. And they're given a COBie prefix. So that's our Autodesk suggestion on the parameters you use. when you want to code up a Revit model for export to COBie, either to the spreadsheet directly or to IFC. But we're very aware that a lot of customers have legacy models. They've been building models. They might have their own non-graphic data standard. But we're finding, just like with AutoCAD, there are different dialects of Revit happening all over the world, right? So we don't have a lot of control. But if someone has done and have a bunch of parameters that represent the data you need for COBie or even something else, and when you go out to IFC, there's a way to configure that to say, we call this warranty underscore blah, blah, blah. We want to call it COBie warranty on the way out of Revit. You can map that and do that. So there's a lot of guidance in there. But at this point, you can just, I just wanted to show that. And I'll leave a stack of business cards here. So if people want to get a copy of this document in the near term, it's available on our website and various places. But I can leave my card and we can make sure we get you this material. Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint. Good. This is a little high wire act because there's hyperlinks in the PowerPoint, but we can't do a hyperlink. I have no mouse control here, so I'm using the gentleman in the back. So what else are we doing? Okay, let's talk a little about COBie. You've all seen this, but the way I like to think about it is those of you who've seen our Vice President, Phil Bernstein, who's in charge of strategy and a thought leadership for the AEC industry, he likes to say that even with a Revit-based BIM process, we see wonderfully detailed BIM models, both in design and construction, and then when they turn them over to the owner, they obliterate it all to paper. So even with these wonderfully articulated Revit models, this is what people get at the end of the project. And the idea is there some way to take this handover, turnover process and make it digital? And this is what UK BIM 2 is all about, right? So how can we take this and somehow make it digital? And that's what the COBie standard is all about. As I said, we've been involved in 2006, and we're very supportive of, I'll caveat this. When I came over here in fall of 2010, I was very supportive of the UK government leveraging the COBie standard, but I was also said, do not try to make COBie do something other than it can do. For example, right? It wasn't quite tricked out for infrastructure. So that's the issue that I think that we're all working on. Here's just a little diagram that how I understand how to talk about COBie. Anyone, how many architects in the audience here? All right, so your job is real easy. If you're using Revit, you have to put in walls, spaces, doors, windows, and because it's a concept design, there's no data except your suggested door size, right? But it's not hardship. But one of the things I'm going to explain to you is, this is the example of the GSA BIM program. That was a spatial BIM. And what the GSA required is all concept design for a courthouse or any public building had to have a minimum level GSA spatial BIM, which was basically this part of COBie, floors, spaces, windows. And the transition, though, was they were going from a paper-based deliverable to a 3D model-based deliverable that had to have some data in it. And we were talking basically, COBie is data potentially on every BIM object in your model. For the GSA BIM program, all they were asking for was metadata according to the GSA spatial standards around their spaces, or IFC space in IFC talk. And guess how that went over with the architects? Anyone have any wagers how that went over? They came kicking and screaming the whole way. As a matter of fact, the GSA actually had a way to check the validity of the deliverable. So if you've authored it in Bentley or AutoCAD Architecture or Revit, you exported this spatial BIM IFC, and they stuck it through Solibre's model checker, and if it did not have the BIM elements in it, they got rejected. So sure enough, in 2006, there was the first contract awarded to an architect in Chicago to do a courthouse. They submitted a blank IFC file with a DWG to the GSA. They got rejected. And the first reaction from the GSA BIM people was, what's wrong with the software? I said, let me ask you this, Calvin. When was the last time the U.S. federal government checked a digital deliverable for a building, right? So think about your challenges as your government agencies in the UK are going to try to enforce the BIM deliverable. What is the teeth behind that, right? But as you get into construction, this is where you start buying components, you get into commissioning, and so a lot of the data starts to come in, and a lot of it is non-graphic data that isn't necessarily resident or belong in the Revit or other BIM model, right? But so we try to put a little box around, here's some of the data you can get from the BIM model, here's some of the stuff that may not happen directly in the BIM model, but it's metadata or links that you put in. What are we doing on time here, Tim? Are we going to give you enough time? Yeah, I think I'm fine. I'm trying to talk slow. I usually accused of being a fast-talking Yankee from the United States. So this is a term that I think I might have invented. I call it how to COBie enable your Revit project. Does anyone have that problem? You want to make your Revit project a COBie project, right? So basically all we're doing is introducing some special parameters for COBie. A lot of them actually already exist in the model that we just map over, area, things like some of that. There's a good subset of the COBie data that's actually already in a BIM model, be it even anyone that writes an IFC file from their model generally has a subset of what you need for COBie. We have both the Omni class and the Unit class, and we've learned that we've got a little wizard where you can dial in your Unit class, and we've now learned that there's going to be Unit class 3, so we can't wait to add, we'll add that once we know it's available. We've also put up some special schedules, and if you look at your, once you introduce this toolkit to your model, you can click on any object and see if the special containers for the COBie data are there. I'm going to move a little faster here because I think I'm going a little too slow. But we have this Autodesk toolkit for Revit where there's really a setup where it establishes some contacts. There's also a modify where it starts to get at how you want to structure the data when you get out to COBie. And then there's what some people call the easy button. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys ever met my colleague, Rich Matringa. He's presented here a lot, I think last year. He's the main technical person behind our COBie solution. In the early days, we basically had schedules of COBie schedules in Revit. We'd have to export them and blast them into a spreadsheet. That was nice because in the sense that people had to think about the data. So the only problem with the easy button is people think that you press it. So once you have your model coded up, you hit the easy button and you get the spreadsheet. But that gives people the wrong impression because there's a lot of process behind making sure you have all that data in the model. And I think a lot of our customers wanted the easy button. Of course, a lot of our salespeople wanted the easy button so they could talk to their customers about the easy button for COBie, but it's really not an easy button. So we have a way to manage contacts because that's part of the requirements for COBie. There's default settings. Let me move on to some of the. There's a whole module for managing zones, element selection. We heard about that from somebody that maybe your owner or your client doesn't need every single piece of data item in the COBie spreadsheet. So you can actually pick what elements you want exported. You can also start, someone was talking about, well, what are the names? There's some configurations to figure out, well, what are we going to call them on the way out? Is it going to be the type? Is there some other name? And there's batch updates to say, okay, once I've done this, go back through the Revit model and update it with all the right parameters. Worksheets. Oops. There's also an append button here. Now this toolkit is not, it's a basic toolkit, gets you to COBie compliance. The append allows you to federate. So if you've got multiple models, you can append them all to the same spreadsheet and get all the data from 5 or 6 Revit models. So really, in summary, it's just it's a little wizard, runs on top of Revit, allows you, the zone management is really great because you can collect your spaces or your IFC spaces and put them in the right collections for zones. There's parameter mapping to figure out which fields, what they're going to be called, and there's export options for what exactly you want to export, if not the whole thing, maybe just the floors, maybe just buildings. It's great for debugging as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Anyone recognize this diagram? This is actually from the March 2011 report. This part of it actually was from an Autodesk early presentation on COBie back in 2008, but somebody from the BIM TAS group took this chart and retrofitted on there. So we like to say that for BIM Level 1 and 2, that the Revit COBie toolkit applies, as well as for the IFC we do too. And then one thing I'm going to say is, based on all the presentations I've been seeing today, I'm going to say that for me as a software vendor at Autodesk, I think it would be quite irresponsible for me to claim or assert that we at Autodesk comply with BIM Level 3. Does anyone think I should say that we do that? I mean, BIM Level 3 is still something that people are figuring out, right? So it's aspirational, but I do think that what we say is moving, it's the data, right? The data is important. How you manage the data is important, but eventually, there really has to be real-time live linking. There's got to be a back-end database, a BIM server managing all this data. That's really how it's become real. It gets a little bit awkward if you're pushing files out, sucking them in back and forth. That's why today, having a common data environment is critically important because you have to manage all of those manual drops. You've got to have a data management system to manage that process. In the future, you will have theoretically an intergalactic database that manages this more, precisely, just like a geospatial, right? And the other thing is we've got Autodesk resellers that can do stuff. We've got Autodesk Consulting that can do level 2 beyond. We've actually got third-party developers. If anyone see the D. Rofus presentation yesterday? They're a great example of an application that goes that next step where they bring this data out into the relational world and manage its interactions with the Revit BIM model. This is just more of the same in terms of the APIs available. We're going to talk about BIM 360 later on in the presentation. John talked about this. Do you guys see the model checker presentation yesterday, most of you folks? So in addition to the toolkit, is some work that we do with the Army Corps of Engineers, it became really important to say, okay, how do I know if my BIM model is meeting the particular owner's requirements? And so the U.S. Army had a thing called Attachment F, which was their BIM exhibit. So we did this for the Army, a quick way for them to check a BIM model, or even for the architect or engineer to check their model before they submitted it. And John talked a little bit about it, but what it really does is you can actually code in some BIM requirements. You can do a pre-check of the model. You can also configure it to check first on level of detail, and there's some automatic model checks. And as John said, this thing is not clairvoyant, right? It's not magic. It does some basic stuff that saves you time. But more importantly, we've configured it for COBie. So one of the big problems you get for COBie is people, especially in the early going, why export all these spreadsheets if the underlying data isn't in the model? So what this thing's just going to do is the parameter there, is it populated? And that'll help people sort of, before they go down the path of debugging an IFC file, right? Has anyone tried to debug an IFC file here in the audience? Not something. Has anyone looked at an IFC file in a text editor? How was the experience, right? So before you start debugging it, why don't you start at the source and see if the data's in there, right? So we can talk more about this afterwards because I'm getting low on time, but there's also another screen where and John showed this, where it'll give you a basic check, but it's just going to, sometimes it's the stupid stuff in a model that drive people crazy. Someone forgot, even an experienced BIM manager forgot to put in some data. Oh, they forgot about the spaces. They didn't realize that they had to populate all this metadata. So it's just another easy way to sort of give a BIM manager, or even an owner or an owner's rep, or maybe even a general contractor who's receiving a BIM submission from a consultant, a way to sort of easily check to see, before they invest all this time in aggregating all this data together, is like, can they just a basic spot check of, how do I know if this deliverable is any good, right? What's a quick and easy way to do that? So it automates some tasks. How are we doing on time? I think I'm going to get ready to give it to Tim. I was going to talk a little bit about our infrastructure solutions in COBie. Really, we support IFC and the Autodesk solutions. Everyone talks about Revit, but we do have a bunch of tools, Civil 3D, InfraWorks for infrastructure design, and they both support IFC, but the caveat is we really don't have a good model view definition for what Civil 3D ought to export to. So a lot of the data is going to be proxy, but we're looking forward to working with Building Smart International and following the work of the UK BIM Task Group on some pilots around infrastructure, so we can sort of help. Once we understand what's actionable, we can sort of help work through some prototypes with our products. Just like we've done over the years with Revit, over multiple years, we expect that we'll be able to, when the standard becomes more defined and cleared for what it means to be BIM Level 2 in infrastructure, we're happy to participate. Okay, this is my last bit before I think I give it over to Tim. Let's talk about Autodesk solutions in PAS 1192-2. And one of the points I want to make is, in a manual, paper-based process for design and construction, where you're passing documents around, maybe 2D drawings and files, it's probably okay. I mean, I don't want to say it's okay, but a lot of people use Windows Explorer to manage their process, right? So the common data environment for a lot of people today is Windows Explorer, right? I mean, it's not really a common data environment, but the stakes are lower for unintelligent 2D documents, drawings, and data. But once you go to 3D BIM, the stakes are much higher. So, for example, I've got a data-rich Revit model. Someone makes a COBie drop. How do I know that that model was approved by somebody? What version of that model did that COBie drop come from? As you pass it along, it gets very, very important to understand where that is, because that data is so important that you better not manage it on your file system. You better have a process in place to know how it moves through, and that's where the role of professional electronic document management comes in. And so Autodesk does, we don't promote a lot of it, but we have a series of solutions for collaboration and data management. Our vision, of course, is to deliver a complete, accurate, connected digital information across the project lifecycle for whoever needs it, whenever they need it, whoever they are. That's our grand vision. We have people working hard on delivering on that. But in terms of an inside the firewall, on-premise collaboration and data management system, we've got a very mature product called Autodesk Vault. It's a central storage for your project data. It integrates with all the AEC design tools. It also has just a flexible way to configure it for both small organizations and large organizations. And so it's inside the firewall, meaning it's not a cloud-based solution, so you can run it inside your firewall. It's based on its roots in the manufacturing space. And the manufacturing people, people are familiar with product lifecycle management and PDM. So for them, they realized, especially with mass production of discrete parts, it was critically important to manage your data. And just we in the AEC business have to catch up to where they've been forever in the manufacturing business, right? And the other thing I want to report is we have a reseller partner, CADline, that's actually come up with a configuration that aligns Vault with the common data environment. And really, that's all about some lifecycle states that correspond to the 0 through 7. And applying the professional document manager that. So they've got I'm going to skip that. We have a PDF that does it, but I'll talk more about it. But they've got a configuration that they provide for Vault to give you a common data environment. The other thing I'll talk about is we have cloud and mobile data management solutions. People are probably familiar with Autodesk BIM 360, which is our preferred cloud and mobile-based solution for managing collaboration and BIM workflows. Right now, it's not a complete, robust, common data environment. I'm going to tell you that. It's pretty good at managing work in progress and shared and published data, but we're looking at investigating the options for making it more robust, both all of the gates and all the approvals and all the stuff you need for a complete common data environment. And more importantly, we've got to get our arms around the security protocol. And we're still ourselves going through that, is I think the fifth document, trying to understand the security protocol and how it means and what is actionable. So we got some work to do, but we're working on it. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to Tim. With 3 Squared. Can you guys switch the PowerPoint? And what I'm going to say about Tim is with 3 Squared, and they're working with us on a prototype for BIM 3, Kobe for BIM 360 Glue and Field. And one of the things about a strategic partner, they do really good stuff. And so Tim's value add last night as the Autodesk strategic partner was he grabbed me as we were crossing the street in Soho and kept me from getting run over by a bicycle. As I was thanking him, I got sideswiped by another bicycle. But at least I was sideswiped.
I tried my best.
Tried my best. So I have a pair of grip pants to prove it, but I did miss him. I'm here today because Tim grabbed me from the bicycle, and then for my own stupidity, I got sideswiped while thanking him. All right, so we're going to, and by the way, I like the choice of surgery. We're hoping to have some Q&A at the end, but because of the podium, we really can't show software because we have no control of that. But we were expecting as we roll this out, we're going to have some more hands-on workshops and working with our reseller channels to help them provide workshops and how the stuff that we've implemented can help people on the path to BIM Level 2. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim.
Hello, everyone. So thank you, Frank. My name is Tim Jones, or also known as Frank's bodyguard, as you heard earlier. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing with Autodesk at the moment, which is focused around Kobe data management in Navisworks and BIM 360 Field. Is that working? There we go. So there's my details. Tweet me or email me if anybody has any questions. I'd love to help where I can. As a partner, I think it's only fair that I put in a shameless plug for 3 Squared in this. So here's one I made earlier. We're a software development company based in Sheffield and London. Work primarily within the rail, logistics and construction sector. We have 3 products out there in the market in the construction sector. So we have the Site Diary, which is, I guess, our 21st century reimagined version of the traditional paper-based diary. Kind of a social aspect to it with Yammer, Twitter type integration. We also have a room data sheet solution, which is a web and mobile-based application for managing room data sheets. And then we have SmartSafe, which is a new product which we're just trialing with Crossrail and a number of Tier 1 contractors at the moment, and that's focused around creating and defining virtual safety zones on a site. So we have a web-based tool which allows you to upload a floor plan, and using that tool you can demark out exclusion zones, permit to work zones, safe zones, and then using sensor-based technology, predominantly around iBeacons, then you can create those zones on site, and we send out alerts, notifications, or contextual-based information down to wearable devices or mobile phones and the like. Okay, so bringing it back on track here then, I guess, to talk about what I came here for today. Really, the project that we've been involved in with Autodesk, at its inception, I guess we took a step back and said, what are we actually trying to achieve here with this project? And I've kind of plucked 4 main points out of that session there, but really for us it was focusing on how we bring COBie data into the construction phase of the project, essentially. And in essence, by doing so, widening the contributors to our COBie data. How we federate and validate COBie information, merge clash detection of actual data within Navisworks as well, and how can we, I guess, remove the need for middleware and maintain control of our data. So for Autodesk customers, how we can do this and have this capability directly within the Autodesk tools. So I guess we condensed that value proposition down into a number of tasks or activities and work streams that my company are currently working through. So we have a process in there which extracts the COBie information from Revit. I think it's probably important to point out at this point, actually, that the work that we are doing here with the Navisworks plugin, I guess, builds on all the good work that CAD Microsystems and Autodesk have done on the Revit side. And we've heard about those today, and we heard about them yesterday. The COBie Revit plugin and also the model checker plugin. So we're looking at how we can leverage what's already been created and bring that across into Navisworks, and how we can create a seamless workflow between the two around information sharing and data management, essentially. Obviously, then we're looking at how we can import data, COBie, into Navisworks, and how we can use or implement some basic validation rules and clash and detection-based workflows around there. And then sending data back out, so how we can export our aggregated or federated data back out into a COBie spreadsheet. And then I think drawing on the value proposition statement that I mentioned earlier about widening our contributors, the next step for the project is to look at how we can then share that data out through BIM 360 Glue. So the output for us, so we are going to be producing a plugin. We've called it the COBie Data Manager, for want of a better word for now, but we are producing a Navisworks plugin to complement the existing Revit plugin that's out there, and the Revit model checker plugin. And then we're also looking at building out capability into Glue. So I guess the aspiration there is to have our viewer and supported COBie data available in the browser. So I'm just going to show you a few screenshots of, I guess, our work in progress so far and what we've achieved to date. And it essentially draws on the tasks there that I mentioned. So we have the capability to attach or bring in a SQL-like database. So one thing that we're looking at I guess, an architectural level is to manage this process and this system off of a SQL database. We are going to be working with the guys that built the Revit plugin to look at how we can, I guess, bring that SQL database from Revit into Navisworks. We also then have the data panel, so that's bringing in our panel, which I'll show you in a bit. And then we've got our export and import workflows built into there, and the publish mechanism, so that's about bursting our data up into the cloud and into BIM 360. I mentioned earlier that we're looking to leverage the Revit COBie plugin earlier. And the idea is, I said, you'll be able to take a spreadsheet from Revit and bring it into Navisworks, so you'll also be able to do that via a SQL-like database as well. The SQL-like database works very well for us at an architectural level. It allows us to get some significant performance enhancements when we're talking lots of data items. It allows us to do batch updates, searching, faster searching, indexing, and allows us to really play around with the data at quite a decent performance level. So we're looking at bringing across a SQL database from Revit into Navisworks. And that's one way you can bring your data in. And we've just got some screenshots of that flow. We also then have our data panel, our visualizer within Navisworks. And that allows you to, I guess, move through your COBie information. We have two-way interaction built in, so as I select attributes of data within the COBie panel, where it can, highlights the selected object within the model, and it works vice versa, where I select a particular component or object in my model, and it shows or highlights the data that is relevant to that particular item that you selected, where it can. We also support inline edits, so directly within the actual COBie Data Visualiser component, we can perform single updates or batch updates on data if we wanted to, and we have indexing and searching built in as well. So we also, slides down a bit. So we also have our export workflow. This is just a screenshot that we've taken for the start of the process, but it allows you to write out a spreadsheet in the traditional COBie format that we all know and love, but allows you also to choose the data elements that you want to export out of that as well, and your location. And then we have some rules there around how we need to treat existing data. So if we're adding to an existing spreadsheet, then do we append to that spreadsheet? Do we overwrite? We've also got some clash detection rules a bit in there about how we should treat data, which is the newest set, those types of rules. Look. So we also have our import. This again allows us to bring in COBie spreadsheets and federate our COBie data into a single, I guess, one source of truth within Navisworks. Again, allows you to choose location, allows you to set some rules around which is the dominant data set. It also allows you to choose which worksheets you'd like to bring into Navisworks as well. And then beyond this, again, we have some basic flows at the moment for clash detection merging as well. So next step for us, so where we are at the moment. So I think I'm all right in saying this, frankly, guys. So we're working towards an invitational customer session in spring 2015, where Autodesk are going to be inviting customers to really experiment and play around with what we've produced so far. Hopefully, we'll get some great feedback in that session. Then I think outside of that session, it's going to be broadened to I guess a customer beta program. We're going to invite more testers into the process, and that's going to happen in summer. Then we are then finally looking at a general release later on this year. And that's me. Thank you, everybody.
I think we have some time for questions if anyone has them. I don't know if they have the mic or not, but we're happy to answer any questions. Anyone has any? We're between lunch. Question? Yeah.
Just in terms of the plugin, will it just produce COBie from Revit models, or will it push COBie out from CADWorks or FabMEP models that are in Navis?
Okay, so the question is really around, you understand the COBie from Revit, but what about some AutoCAD-based modelers like CAD-MEP? Right?
AutoCAD and non-AutoCAD.
Right, okay. Yeah, so I'll address that. So the first thing I'm going to address is our first phase of this project is, as you know, Navisworks can bring in data from multiple BIM modelers, both IFC and the native file formats, but our first phase is really to prove that we can take Revit data, the INBIM, and move it through. So our first phase is that, and we fully intend, presumably, let's say, for instance, that somebody exports a COBie-compliant IFC file from another application. It's our intention to be able to bring that into Navisworks and continue to aggregate that and federate COBie models. And in terms of CAD-MEP, for those who know, CAD-MEP is a fabrication level of detail modeler that runs on top of AutoCAD. It's actually from a company called Map Limited we bought about 3 years ago. So a lot of mechanical contractors use that. And we've been getting some demand on that, and I think we're going to have to revisit it, because what's happening is with Revit 2016, right, we've got some other customers that, with Revit 2016, we're beginning to bring MEP fabrication level of detail on top of Revit. but it's not as robust as Academy P. So we were trying to figure out, well, do we do something for the AutoCAD-based Academy P and some of the other, or do we just wait and leverage what we've already done for Revit? So, but I'd love to talk to you more about that, and I think we're going to. What?
Doing it on Revit, it's no good to us because we've got CAD.
Right. So we're going to revisit that issue with CAD. We're getting a lot more requests for Academy P. Because that's the other interesting part about this whole BIM Level 2 is a very important part of it, and a very important part of the data community, the actual mechanical contractors, right? They do all the serious work. They do the serious, and the items that they model and put into buildings are the ones that need the most maintenance, right? So that's a big part of it.
That's the code out.
Right.
CAD is the only thing that gives you the code out.
Right. Right.
The design in Revit, you've got
Right.
stages in it, but it's not about translating all that through.
Right.
It's still not very about converting.
That's right. Yeah. So we're looking through that, and so we'll talk more about it in the break, but we're definitely going to revisit that. Another question? Yeah.
Yes, just want to make a question as a user for the Autodesk 360.
Okay.
So I tried, the company is trying to use it as a system like X or Protocol, trying to use it as specific for the files, the Revit files, the AutoCAD files. So just want for you to talk a bit, because from my experience, I tried to use it as Autodesk 360 project, which is a paying platform, Autodesk 360 free platform, and then you have a plugin to install on your computer, which is Autodesk 360, but they don't seem to communicate between themselves.
All right, so you're using what we call Autodesk 360 that comes with your auto subscription that gives you what I call basic peer-to-peer collaboration, right? And so, as you folks know, if you're all because we have a multitude of different little products. So what we're saying is if you want to do just plain old peer-to-peer collaboration and just leverage what comes in the box, there's this thing called Autodesk 360. And we've also come out with a new version. But in terms of our preferred solution for BIM Level 2 workflows is really BIM 360, which is built on that platform, but that's our preferred solution. But I think what we can do is we'll exchange cards after this session, and I can get more details around what your issue is and see if we can help turn it around for you. Does that make sense? Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. And I guess it's lunchtime, right?
All right. Thank you.